Hello, and welcome to the Green Team of the Legendarium, the weird little spin-off podcast where patrons of the Legendarium get together and talk about the books and topics the main crew haven't gotten around to yet. I'm Seeker, and today I have with me Jingles90.
Howdy.
And today we are covering the third and our last of the Paksenarrion books, Oath of Gold. If you missed our previous reviews, you can find the first one, The Sheep Farmer's Daughter, episode 193, and for book 2, Divided Allegiance, episode 203. All right, Jingles, take us away. General impressions.
I ended up giving this book 5 out of 5 stars. I would probably realistically give it like a 4.75 out of 5 stars. If Goodreads let me do that. Mostly because I loved this book. I love it as an ending to the Deed of Paksenarrion. But there were some weird pacing things that I kind of struggled with in the middle of the book that we can get into a little bit more later.
Well, the book is very sharply divided into acts or parts. It's got very distinct. We are now in stage 1. Now we're in stage 2.
Yep, and sometimes it rambles a little bit in some of those stages. Like I'm gonna say the middle piece that's like 200 pages could have been like 100 pages shorter, and I think we would have been just fine.
The quest,
not even the quest, just part of the quest, the questioning, the interviews. I felt
I bundle all of that in as the quest.
Yeah.
Although, in a very real sense, and something I want to go over later, is how this whole trilogy is the hero's journey. Probably about 90% of the major checkpoints of a hero's journey, if you go down the list, it's got them.
Oh, yeah. I think this story, especially the ending, very much ends in, that kind of, I don't know, Old English classic tale style. Like it feels very Arthurian in its way it ends.
Very Tolkien.
Yeah, very Tolkien. The result is, we're not talking about spoilers right now, but it's probably exactly what you think it is. Mm-hmm. And really the only thing that makes it deviate that much, and this is still her hero's journey, but Paksenarrion herself is the deviation.
Okay, I don't see that. We'll get to that later.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I would. Anyway, yeah.
I liked a lot of this. There was one aspect that really rubbed me the wrong way, but we'll get to that later. I very much enjoyed the storytelling in general, though. Very enjoyable. But there was one act that was just downright hard to read.
Yeah.
I usually do these books twice before we record, and I just skipped from that part on.
Oh, really?
Because it was, and that a lot of that has to do with my own personal background and certain issues that I have with the plot, and the issues I'll cover. My background I'll skip.
Yeah, fair enough.
This is not a therapy session.
Yeah. I could see how maybe some things are going to be a lot tougher for people to deal with than others.
You notice we tend to dwell on the darkest parts of this?
We do. Well, so that's I was kind of gonna.
This has so much life in it, and actually, this is one thing that's not spoilery. The beginning, I love how they broke her recovery, because the last book ended in a really dark place. This book opens with the beginning of healing, and then you think it's over, and then it's not over. There's a whole nother section of continued healing that continues, and then even once the healing is officially done, it's not over. You
Yeah.
know, it's like healing is an ongoing journey. And that is one aspect of this book that I absolutely loved. It's not just personal growth that's ongoing, it's healing, and the changes that result from the healing are a continuing journey that never ends.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
it's a
know,
very
so that
powerful message. And I think there's a lot, like, that's kind of going back a little bit. It is really weird that we focus so much on the dark stuff, but so much of this book, like when I say that this is a very optimistic, positive series and story, I mean I truly mean that. There's
oh
a
yeah, it
lot of
is.
there's a lot to love
In many
about
ways, it's the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
yeah.
You know,
Um
or what did you say? You know, King Arthur style. You
yeah.
know, although in a lot of ways, Arthur's a dark story. He does die at
It
the
is.
end.
Well, and I'd say this is way darker than anything Tolkien ever put to paper, I think. Um, when it gets dark, this is some of the darkest stuff I think
Well,
I've ever
yeah, I
read.
think this is darker, but in a very different way.
Yeah.
Tolkien is existentially worldwide dark. This is very personal dark.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
I
Tolkien
think
deals
that
with end of the world. This deals with end of self.
yeah, and I think that personal touch is what makes it, at least for me, just
Mhm. Well,
a
this is
bigger
like if the
struggle.
story was completely based around Bilbo.
Right.
You
Or
know, if
even
the only
Gollum.
thing that mattered was Bilbo or Gollum, yeah. You know, if they were the one and only protagonist,
Yeah.
you
And
know, it
actually,
would be
instead of a little bit of a glimpse of Smeagol transforming, you get everything
mhm,
that he goes through, all the suffering he
right.
deals with. Um,
Yeah. I mean, if you
yeah.
if you think of Smeagol as being redeemed at the end, which I don't
Which I don't
personally,
think
but
so, but yeah.
I
But
think he was
yeah,
just trying to grab the ring and he tripped.
yeah, that's fair.
But that's
Hey,
open to interpretation. I know people who say
yeah.
no, he sacrificed himself at the end to save all of humanity. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't fit for
That's
me.
an interesting interpretation. I don't know. Maybe I'm too influenced by the movies at this point,
Oh
but
no, the book is
I
exactly the
don't.
same.
Yeah, I thought it was
He
exactly the same. So
he wants the ring. He's terrified it'll be destroyed. He tries to grab it and he trips.
yeah,
But that's I've heard the other view argued, and I have talked to people who go to incredible length to continue to view the world through their preferred lens. So if that's how they have to see the world,
yeah.
you know, is what it
Kind of
is.
ironically, Paksenarrion also chooses to continue to view the world in her own way,
Oh yeah,
um,
yeah. Well, we
and
you know
gets
in
paid
in a
for it.
in a weird way we all do. I
Yeah.
think you and I just view the world through a darker lens than Pax, you know,
Yeah.
or the people we're talking about. You know, because
Right.
I've had people try to convince me to look on the bright side, and I'm like, but it ain't there.
Yeah. Fair. Yeah.
So, you know, who's right? Who knows? It's the what are they called? The blind man and the elephant.
Right.
Anyways, let's give us the uh,
Synopsis.
synopsis.
Yeah,
Yes,
or the summary. Yeah,
summary.
so,
Yeah.
for people not in the know, this is gonna be full spoilers ahead. Um, if you've read the trilogy this far, obviously, just finish it out. It's worth it.
Oh yeah, absolutely worth it to finish
Yeah.
it.
So, alrighty. After a season with the Quakagon and Ranger Elves, Pax is back to her old courageous self, more or less. Things have changed for her as it becomes readily apparent that Gerd has chosen her as a paladin regardless of ceremony. Her ability to have faith in Gerd will lead her back to Duke Falan, save him from assassination, and retrieve a new sword and mount. Thus, her holy quest begins. She must find the lost true king of Leonia and restore him to the throne. Pax will spend time collecting the stories of those who remember the king as a small boy, and in the biggest, circular, not at all difficult mystery to solve, she will return to Falan, the true king. But evil forces are also on the trail, and once he is revealed, they kidnap him. In perhaps one of the most powerful chapters this reader has read in a long time, Pax gives herself over to the cult of Liart for 5 days in trade for Falan's safety. She will then go to his aid and fight by his side until he has until he has made it to the throne. So ends the deed of Paksenarrion.
Mhm. And for those who don't remember, Liart is this world's god of torture and pain and suffering.
Yep.
So, yeah, that if you guys hadn't guessed in advance, that was the chapter I skipped rereading.
Yeah, and that's fair. And that's the one
Yeah. But
it's
let's get back to the
yeah.
beginning.
Yeah,
I
let's go to the front.
absolutely love the opening monologue that Pax has when she's walking into Brewer's Bridge without even knowing she's in Brewer's Bridge. And this, when she realizes it, she thinks about going to her friends, but her mind keeps feeding her dozens of reasons why they'll reject her, why she's not worthy, why she can't. Just what's to an outsider are absurdities, to her are perfectly reasonable and acceptable reasons to not ask anyone else for help. It's better to die. And she fully convinces herself that the whole world will be better off if she weren't in it, when, basically chance forces her to talk to the Quacken. And, I love that whole therapy session that he does with her, and how it's just so different from what the Gerd dish people tried to do. It's like the Gerds were surgeons, and he's more of a therapist. You know, if we're thinking physical injury, he's the physical therapist, and they're the the reconstructive surgery or tumor removal people.
Right.
And
Yeah, and
then
he also just takes a far more compassionate outlook at what her problems are.
yes,
I don't think
well,
that's not to
like I
say, like,
said,
yeah.
I mean, surgeons aren't known for their overwhelming compassion.
No, they're not. And I don't want to sound like the paladins are totally cold to this idea of fixing her, but they don't they don't look at the actual symptoms.
Mm. They're also very ends oriented.
Yeah.
You know.
And yeah, and they also uh they take a very base assumption that she has somehow done something wrong, because they're also very religiously
Right.
dogmatic. So
Which at the end it turns out she had done something wrong, but it's it's the yeah that's my issue. We'll get to that when we get to that point. But yeah, we're getting very close to my issue.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think the beginning of this book is really strong, just for the Quakagon parts.
mhm.
The Rangers kind of take him or leave him. The whole scene where she gets trapped under the tree, um,
Yeah, but I
it was
love
interesting,
how
but
the first time I read it, I was annoyed because I thought her recovery ended with the Quacken, and I didn't realize that it was continuing with her time with the Rangers. And it wasn't until she came back from being with the Rangers that she felt she was healed. And somehow I missed that the first time around. The second time, I was like, "Oh, okay, now it makes sense. We're not just doing, like if you watch." Okay, in the last several seasons of TNG, Star Trek Next Generation, they would have these 2 episode or season cliffhangers.
sure.
And then the crisis that the entire episode, sometimes a 2-hour episode, had built up to, would be resolved in the first 5 minutes of the new season's episode.
Right.
And it was so annoying because it's like this massive buildup for, oh, we found the key to turn the lock, problem solved. And
Right.
it's just, you know, and I thought that's what was happening here. But it wasn't until my second read that I realized, oh no, her whole time with the Rangers was, her continuing recovery.
Yeah.
And then with people that he knew and trusted, she was basically sent out for like supervised on the job, therapy or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
And the whole that whole part made a lot more sense to me.
Yeah. Well, that's what I kind of like about the way that these three books as a whole are structured, is the first book and part of the beginning of the second book are all kind of just the initiation process in some ways for like figuring out if Pax is worthy of being a paladin.
Yes.
And then by the time she actually gets to Brewer's Bridge for the first time, that's when like the journey to that point actually starts. And so we do see that cycle of damaging and healing, coming back and coming full circle and seeing how you failed these tests and now you're coming back to them and doing them quote unquote correctly.
Right.
At least how this is framed. So yeah, so like that was one of the weirder things, was looking at how repetitive this book is as far as like where she travels. They're all almost kind of
the world got expanded a bit, but not a lot.
But not a lot.
Especially if you're used to something like Sanderson.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, this world is very small.
Yeah. It feels very small. It feels like this is on one continent. Like we went to the second continent in the first book.
This isn't even, I mean, I don't even think of it as a continent.
It's a country.
I think of it as, you know, all taking place in northern Spain and southern France.
Yeah, that'd be fair.
You know, you can get to most places by walking for a week.
Yep.
Yeah.
Kingdoms are mostly just broken apart by forests, long ranges of forests
and it's very much dukedoms. You know, it's like, I don't know, you know, middle-aged Germany, you know, before the 100 Years' War. It's just, or not 100 years, 30 years. So it's all a bunch of, you know, what do they call those? Where the city is a country, city-states.
Okay, there we go.
You know, it's like a bunch of city-states, or at most 2 or 3 cities make a big state.
Right. Have a couple of satellite villages.
Yeah, and that's about it.
Yeah. But yeah, I do like the kind of cyclical nature of what we see in the last 2 books and how it all, you know, comes together, and really does just encompass this whole, like you were saying, a hero's journey, but also specifically this idea that you have to revisit your pain to become, you know,
you have to to go Jungian, since we're doing hero's journey anyways, you have to embrace your shadow. You know, you can't just ignore it. You gotta accept that it's part of you. You've gotta learn from your pain and let it be who you are. And I mean, at the end, that's her biggest lesson, I think, is, you know, she finds out, well, we'll get to that. But okay, I wrote down the hero's journey points that I thought were covered in this trilogy. So
let's hear 'em.
She hears the call back when she first heals with the medallion. She denies the call, basically all of book 2 and book 1. Finally accepts the call, gets a quest, the descent into hell, journey home with, and this is tricky because there's almost 2 deaths and rebirths. And then and journey home is kind of iffy as well. She almost does 2 of them, a bit like Lord of the Rings, because Frodo goes home to the Shire, but then he goes home to the Undying Lands as well. So
right,
you know, but yeah, this was, when I finished this, my mind just went chick 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 chick. Okay, yeah, this is almost pace for pace hero's journey.
Yeah. Campbell would be so proud.
Who?
Campbell, isn't he the?
Oh yes, Joseph Campbell. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't hear the name. So.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to say. This is kind of a comfort read, but yeah, it plays out, like you said, exactly as you kind of expect it to, except for when it doesn't.
Yeah.
Descent into hell in this case can be pretty surprising, because I was not expecting it that dark. No,
I did really appreciate, and I think you probably more than me appreciate the fact where they decided to stop with the graphic descriptions of what was happening to her.
Yeah,
it's like her clothes are fully on when the storytelling ends of what they're doing to her, and then you get like a 1-sentence summary after 5 days of dut 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 dut. You know, Well, I guess we're doing spoilers, so divine
Yeah.
intervention.
Yeah, absolute divine intervention, and no, in no way questioned. This
Yeah,
was
and
absolutely
what's nice though is it didn't come across like a cheat. It didn't come. It's like
no, it didn't.
you fully expect the gods to intercede at this point, and if they didn't, it wouldn't fit the story.
Absolutely.
You
Well,
know.
because I mean, if we look at it again, like this is absolutely mirroring her time with the orcs in the second
Mhm.
book.
Oh, absolutely,
And but it's
absolutely.
so much worse. I mean, because she
Mhm.
in the at least with the orcs, she's fighting for herself. She's defending herself. It's especially for me, like that makes more sense than
Mhm.
letting whatever just happened in
Just happened.
Liard's. Yeah, in Liard's, I guess it's the Thieves Guild, letting that happen the way it does
Yeah.
because it's miserable. It's absolutely
Well,
uncomfortable.
okay, now we're going to get into my issue
Yeah,
because okay, so I agree with the fact that it's heavily emphasized that the reason she failed when she was with the dark elves was because she let her reactions be driven by her anger.
right.
And then when she's in Liart's possession, she she just completely surrenders. I mean, the contract she makes is I will not fight back.
Right.
And so she completely surrenders up her body, and possibly even her soul to be destroyed by the god of torture in order to accomplish her goal, which is getting the king free. Because the king was captured and, she has to trade her life for those of her friends. And I don't have a big problem with anything in the story as it is told. But part of me absolutely rejects the idea of the martyrs singing as they were burned or torn apart. I don't know if have you ever heard the story of the the Christians that were supposedly killed during the Russian Revolution on the ice?
No, I don't think so.
The story goes that a bunch of Christians were um, stripped of their clothes and sent out on the ice to die, and told that if you renounce your religion, we'll give you your clothes back. And if they go out there and they start singing as they drop. And it has this whole thing about this one guy who denounces and yada yada yada, a big, conversion moment for one of the soldiers, etc. But you see this over and over again if you go through, like, I never read Fox Book of Martyrs, but I've read books that were based off it. And the stories of, you know, people being incinerating and singing as the flames consume their body, and the ropes where the ropes burn off and then they raise their arms towards heaven as they're singing. I'm like, it's just too much to even to believe.
Yeah, I so yeah, I get where you're coming from. I personally see it like that's a conundrum of like incorporating faith into anything, especially a magic system. Like we can't have her she's a paladin. It's full on faith driven.
Yeah, well, her gods are real. Sorry to any of the Christians listening.
Yeah, and her gods are yeah. Yeah, well, exactly. Her gods actually have interacted with her. She has
Yes,
actually seen those interactions.
yes.
And so the idea that she might deviate from the course that she has already set with a god who values her setting those courses,
Right.
um, and then still getting
And
divine intervention, that story starts to break down really fast, right? Like it starts to kind of just not work at all.
you mean
um,
if she doesn't get the intervention?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
exactly.
no, it absolutely has to happen for this story. It
Yeah.
was just, well, okay. Um this is from First Corinthians uh chapter 12 verse 9 and 10. And he said unto me, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly therefore will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore, I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecutions, in distress, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. And I mean, that is this event to a T. And I don't have a problem with Pax, this being Pax's story. But again, apologies to the Christians. If faith gets you through the day, good for you. But I had faith fail me too many times growing up, and we won't talk about that. And the way it's almost as if, and what surprises me is I've read her science fiction, and there's none of this in there.
Right.
At least not that I remember. But the message was just so strong at the ending of this that I found it personally triggering.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, but again, not again.
I mean, just the
I do
fact that
just
I
like,
knew those
yeah,
verses to look them up.
yeah, right. That was impressive. That's far more Bible than I know. But
Well, I just read them.
yeah,
But there was a time when I memorized over half of what I just read.
yeah.
So,
And but it's a lot of this does have to be chalked up to her being a paladin, and I do kind of appreciate Elizabeth Moon's decision to actually go all in on the actual faith piece of it, because
okay.
I don't think we see that a lot. Or like I said, this is really my first experience with like true holy paladins.
I haven't read many,
Yeah.
but you're right. This is the only paladin story I've read where there's this level of a test of faith.
Yeah.
I mean, you read like the Dragonlance trilogies, or well, whatever they are, and yeah, they've got a couple paladins, but they just pray and something either happens or it doesn't.
Yeah.
The level of faith is basically assigned on their stat sheet.
Yeah.
Whereas here, we go through the journey of obtaining faith and
Right.
the trials and the answers and the learning what the God expects, and learning in her case, which is what I do really respect. Pax does not take the word of the church.
No.
Pax listens to her own heart and decides, you know what? This is what I think Gerd would want based on my personal conviction of what is right and wrong. And that can go disastrously wrong. Don't get me wrong. But
and she has no convert.
Also,
she never. Or go ahead. Yeah.
It's like, well, you can't have a personal relationship or personal conviction of your convictions if they're not your convictions.
Yeah. And and she never actually has a direct conversation with Gerd at all. Not once. And I think, it works really well that she just kind of assumes that where she's going is where she's supposed to be, and she figures it out. She figures out what she's supposed to do. And again, that scene takes that to its ultimate level where, she realizes she has to do this. I don't know how there's a lot of, if you stop to think, it's like, they're not going to honor a 5-day pact. They're not going to honor, like, why would they? They have no reason to. Yeah. And just kind of.
She fully expected to die.
Yeah. And, that.
But again, it was
coming back to it's really good.
Surrendering to that, which the gods rewarded. And they did reward it. She gets healed. Yeah. Her life is saved. And then she gets that mark. She is marked as one of the elect.
Yeah. The very select few that actually have a mark of the god.
144,000 here.
Yeah. What do you make of I'm forgetting the thief's name right now, but the guy who ends up saving her from. Yeah. Because I think
he's one of the, to go back to my analogy of martyrs in the arena, he's one of the members in the arena who converted due to the classic martyr experience, which is, legend tells us is why God allowed so many Christians supposedly to be, modern history has really taken objection to that whole idea because apparently there's very little documentary evidence of it.
Yeah.
Christians were killed and were persecuted, but there's almost no evidence that they were the primary attraction in the Colosseum.
Right.
So, but yeah, the story goes that, and this, growing up hearing a lot of Christian stuff the way I did, there were a lot of stories of like people who were in jail who watched one of their inmates find religion and then watched them and then decided based on their actions and the way they handled the hard stuff in their life that the religion was real and decided to convert themselves. So personal example is definitely the best, and personal example through a very difficult or trying experience is by far the best way to spread a religion or a faith or a philosophy or, any kind of this is how you be good.
Well, yeah, that's what I think in some way. I mean, she's a paladin, obviously, but that also makes her pretty saintly. I think is part of this is that we actually see her become a little bit, still even a little bit more holy than a paladin. I don't know where that ranking actually fits, but
I don't think this world has saints, but yeah. There are certain paladins that definitely are at least in the stories a rank above others.
Yeah.
And they talk about her experience that this is an extremely rare thing that has been documented, but doesn't happen every day.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, it was, obviously too, this is only the opening trilogy. There's several more books. I don't know how many of them are prequels and how many are sequels, but I'm sure that if any of them are sequels or even prequels, we'll see more of that thief guy in them.
Yeah.
Because he's too much of a major side character to simply disappear.
Yeah. Yeah, I
wouldn't be surprised if he has his own storyline.
That's kind of what I would expect. I mean, I would hope that if we're really going to talk about the deed of Paksenarrion, we're actually going to see what that deed does. Because the book really does wrap up in a really nice paragraph of like, yep, he made it. He was king, and it was all really dandy, and people remembered Paksenarrion for what she did.
Yeah, I mean, it basically ends with the crowning of the king of Gondor.
Yeah,
but
and all was right in the world. We think. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. We think.
Okay, so the whole mystery of it all, of the Holy Quest, what did you make of that? Because I gotta tell you, the second that I saw that we're dealing with a guy that we've known for 3 books called Fieri, and then the kid was
I
named
knew he was going to be the
Alfieri.
king almost from the beginning. Yeah.
I mean, it was just like, why are we even running this circle? I know Pax isn't the sharpest tool in the shed, but
well, Pax is also blinded by her own expectations.
yeah,
That's what I got out of the whole thing. That Pax couldn't see what was right in front of her because her own prejudices, her own self-doubt, it's like she put people in boxes, and it's like with her friend, well, she's good. She's a good fighter. She's my friend. And that turns out to be the person who betrays her. And even when she's fighting with her, hearing her voice, she's like, there's something so familiar about this person.
Yeah.
And it's like, Pax, you know who that is.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, her brain cannot put the two together because in her brain, it's a good person. And a good person wouldn't be fighting me. Therefore, it's not her.
Right.
And I think that's what happened with Pax is he was the Duke. That's what he is. He's the Duke. Therefore, he's not the prince because he's the Duke.
Yeah. Never mind that every time you look at him, you're like, he doesn't look 50.
Yeah.
He looks really good for 50.
The clues are...
Or
Moon was so heavy-handed with the clues. It's like it wasn't even subtle.
That's the
we
thing.
Were obviously meant,
Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of my problem with this whole piece is just even narratively speaking, like if we just go on a total meta narrative level, there is just so much restriction, and this is part of what makes the world feel so small. There's just so much restriction to what all of these things kind of play out to be. Like,
Huh.
it has to be a person that you know, but there's only like 5 people that you know, and which one
Yes.
of the 5 is a leader?
Mhm.
One of them is,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, like I said, this
Um,
isn't Sanderson.
no,
It's not even
which
Wheel
it
of
doesn't
Time. It's
no, it doesn't have to be either. I'm just kind of I think really what it came down to was that this took up half the book.
yeah. Well, I
Um,
think it's also that this was a planned trilogy.
yeah,
So she introduced us to all the people, and then the culmination of our hero's journey had to include the people we had been introduced to in the first book.
right.
You know, whereas if this were a more like I think if Moon had planned it to go bigger from the beginning, then she could have done more with it. But she kind of locked herself in, and it was just way too obvious.
Yeah.
And very circular. He Duke, what's his name?
Falan or
Duke
Philan.
Falon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Duke Falon or Falan or however it's pronounced. You'd think I'd know since I listened to it, but he helps her become who she needs to be so that she can help him become who he is.
Yeah.
It was very, yeah. But like you said, you're still giving it a 4.7 or a 5 because the story was just a really fun, mostly fun and enjoyable story to read.
Right.
You know, good conquers evil. The gods actually do stuff.
Yep.
Um, you know, the king is found, the kingdom is saved. You know, Arthur has drawn the sword, and there's no uh
LaFay.
yeah,
No.
there's no Morgan Le Fay.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so well there is, but he kind of dies in the beginning.
Yeah. I will give Moon kudos too, because I was a little worried after reading all that section. I was, oh my goodness, if she ends up marrying him and becoming queen, I'm gonna be so mad. this this woman who has had shown no interest in that type of relationship whatsoever, just like
Oh, I didn't even
fulfilling
doubt
the
it when they're like, "No,
yeah
you can be queen," and she's like, "Hell no!" I'm
no
like, "Yeah,
yeah
no, that's not gonna happen."
so yeah, so I am glad that we didn't see like the not too classic or too traditional. Um,
Yeah, no, and Pax remains in essence the Virgin Warrior. You
right.
know, she in an odd sort of way, she's Brienne of Tarth. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
as an archetype, if you will.
Yeah.
You know,
So,
she's
um,
very without the weird season 5 romance with Jamie Lannister.
right. The
You know,
weirdest
she's she,
decision.
she's very, she doesn't care about relationships. She doesn't care. All she cares about is doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You know.
And
Uh,
she's very eagerly just kind of fades away and continues to do
mhm. And she
whatever she
doesn't
needs to do.
impose her version of morality on anybody.
No.
She just lives it.
Yep.
You know. So
No,
yeah,
she
yeah, I
is
love that about her.
she's very much a paragon and one that
Mm.
I'm very comfortable with like accepting as such. Yeah. Well, I do gotta ask you, are you going to read? Because I gotta be honest, I think after reading these 3, I'm like, "I'm good. I got everything I needed out of this." I
Mm.
don't know if I wanna continue the story. Would you read the other
Well,
series?
I will, but I tend to binge entire authors
Okay.
because I drive and I listen up to about 10 hours a day of audio. So, I mean, I'm currently listening to Julianne Norwich's history of of all the popes.
Oh, cool. Alright.
It's a narrative book that just goes through all the popes. It's like 30 hours long, and we are currently right around the 30 Years' War.
Oh, dang. Okay.
So, and now I understand why the podcast Wickenburg to Westphalia begins with a history of the geography of Europe. It's like, oh my God. Yeah, he really did have to go back in time because the complicated history between the papacy, the Holy Roman Empire, the Kingdom of France, the Kingdom of Spain, and the Germanies and the Norwegian, it was insane.
Well, so at some point you will get back to this world and
Yeah, I will go through and I'll try to get as many of Elizabeth Moon's books that I can on audio. I've already listened to two of her space saga series she's got
yeah.
um, that are really fun. They're like 5 or 6 books long, but I don't know how short they are. It's been a long time, but they're just fun space opera adventure.
Yeah.
Pretty classic. But yeah, no, I will definitely go through the rest and just to see the rest of the story and the rest of Elizabeth Moon because
Yeah.
there's like 5 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s authors that are women that were like highly influential to the genre, and I want to read them all. Um,
Fair enough.
I'm blanking on her name. Um, Red Book. Little Red
Oh,
Book turned me on to the list of like her favorite female authors from the era that she thinks are must reads.
yeah.
And yeah, one of them is Moon. The other is uh, uh, Dragon Riders of Pern Lady,
McCaffrey.
Anne McCaffrey, and there's a couple of others that I'm not going to try to remember right now. But
Fair enough.
I haven't
Yeah.
read them, so I can't think of the novels they wrote.
Yeah. Well, I think they've even co-authored stuff together.
Yes, they
Some of
have.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Elizabeth Moon co-authored The Ship That Sang with Anne McCaffrey, or The Ship Who Sang. I forget. But that was an interesting story.
I'll have to. I've never read any McCaffrey. I need to get into that.
The the first, if you do Dragon Riders, I'll give you the ones that I recommend because she gets very repetitious,
Yeah.
and some of them are just not all that interesting. And she's got like 3 or 4 plot lines that she just keeps repeating, like in a random story generator. And I think there's like 6 of the Dragon Rider books are maybe 7 are worth reading. The rest are, if you've read those 7, you've read them all.
Cool. Okay. Well, that's good to know.
And then she's got others like Acorna is this trilogy about a unicorn girl who is found, and she's actually a descendant from the ancient unicorns on Earth. And
That's
it's
fun.
just a fun, almost YA novel.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
But anyways,
Yeah. Is there
it's-
anything else you want to cover? Did we
yeah.
get to everything?
Well, we already kind of said it. Um, you gave yours a 5. I'd give mine a 4. So between the two of us, 4.5, I guess. I'm not doing my
Yeah.
calculator at the moment. On Goodreads, this has got a 4.27 with a total of 7,448 ratings. So excellent for Goodreads.
Yep.
On Amazon, a 4.7 with 651 verified having bought the book ratings. So excellent there too.
Yeah.
So like we said, really good book. A couple parts a little difficult to read, but they almost make the story worth it.
They do. And I think if anyone's looking for just classic adventure quest line story,
Mm-hmm.
with just a solid character, Paksenarrion is gonna go down as one of the best for me. I just
I
kind
will
of love
challenge you
her.
on that.
Yeah.
I've got
Okay.
another I've got another series that I'm hoping to talk you into.
All right.
And we'll see. It's the only other Paladin series I've read.
Oh,
But
okay. Yeah, I'll be interested. I know there's an author on Discord, Dan. I haven't read his book yet, but he's written a He's written a Paladin series that I want
Is
to.
he the one who did the interview with Craig?
Yes, he is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those books are on my list. I just
Yeah.
haven't gotten to them yet.
So maybe he'll put me to the test too once I get to those.
Yeah. If we keep recording long enough, I want to read those, and if we think they're worth doing, or maybe we'll just do a thing on them, because he was an author that Craig had on his show, so it'd be kind of cool for Craig to interview the author and Green Team to trash his books.
Very fair. Cool.
All right. This concludes our episode. You can find us on the Legendarium's Discord. The invite link is on legendarium.com. We're also on Twitter at Green Team Pod and Reddit. Join us in supporting the Legendarium via Patreon. Thanks to Professor Craig for loaning us a little corner of your media empire. Shout out to Horizon Brave for starting it all. Thank you to my panelists, Jingles90. I'm the host, Seeker. Until next time, bye.
Later, Gators.
Music is Galactic Damages by Jingle Punks. Ugh, I just don't get why volunteering to be victimized is virtuous.